All right, so we are now recording. Just a reminder to anybody who joins to please update the notes with your name and your company affiliation. All right, so the first item on our agenda is the carried over item for managing the OpenJ9 issues. Jonathan, I see that you've added a number of queries and listings. Do you want to walk us through those?
Yeah, sure. So I think the overall objective is to have some sort of chart so that we can track various items, see whether we're going up, down, or pretty much staying the same. What I wanted to make sure was that people were happy with the queries. I think some of those queries might be a little bit basic, so they might not be quite capturing what we feel that we need to. But for this meeting, what I wanted to do is show the raw data, show test failures, JEPs, how many are open in total. Where we captured them last week, I've also indicated whether they're up or down from last week and also what the previous numbers were. But I've included those queries so that we can review those, make sure that we're happy that it's the right titles, we're capturing the right data, but also that the queries, people agree that the queries are actually capturing what we intend to capture. And at that point, what I'll do is we can distill that information that we want down into numbers and generate a weekly report on those figures in a chart, essentially.
Okay.
I guess one question is, what are we trying to track here? Because the number of open issues is kind of like it's an interesting number, but I'm not sure I'm not sure what it's a sign of, other than that there's stuff to do in a component.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's why I've listed them, and I've listed the various other items. I'd probably agree that one is a strange one. Oh, it's going up. What does that mean? Well, it can mean so many different things. One thing is that you're getting more issues because you've got more defects. Another one is you've got some great ideas, so you're raising issues to go capture those. It's not a great indicator. So that's kind of the thing that I wanted people to have a think about. What are the key things that we want to measure? And that number, I'm not sure that on its own you can tell a lot from.
I think if it's growing without bounds is when it becomes interesting.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, but I'm not sure how to define what those bounds are. What's the maximum?
Yeah, I think we use our judgment there. I think one of the reasons to track this is to say, it's growing rapidly. It hasn't come down in a month, and maybe we need more people on this component, right? Or we need to blitz and do a bug blitz where we get rid of some of these before we work on new features. Now, do we have, I haven't lately looked at the list of labels. Do we have a differentiator between enhancement versus bug?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be, for me, I care if the bug list is going up in the test component. The enhancement stuff is potentially less interesting. If it's sitting for a while, it might indicate that we aren't getting to our feature list as quickly as we need to, and
Okay. No, so there's another aspect of this that we're not measuring if we're only looking at issues, right? I mean, if we were also tracking pull requests, where we also try to fairly rigorously tag what the pull request is affecting, that also provides kind of a measure of our velocity, at least across the different components. So if we were to see the number of issues going up and the velocity of that component not also going up, that might indicate a problem. But for now, I think we just need to start collecting some data and see what we see, and if there's concerns, we can.
Yeah. So I guess the general statement here is I've gone through and I've captured some data. If we think there's something missing, let's call it out, and we can continue. We can start capturing that too. I guess we're not quite sure at the moment what ones are going to be more useful than others. Maybe that means we just track a little bit too much and we drop things as as we move on if we don't think it's useful?
It would be good to be able to identify the issues which are must fix for our next release.
And I guess those are called blockers, are they? We have a label that, are we using for that?
So for the 0.8 release, what we did is we created a milestone, and then we assigned issues to the milestone. So we could do it that way instead. And then we could also assign a blocker to the issue if we think it's a blocker for the release. But it would also be in the milestone plan.
I mean, I guess I expect that each component lead is really paying fairly close attention to their lists. And if they feel that they need help or have problems addressing them, that comes up in this meeting. Do we have all the components? We don't really have all the components represented at this meeting at present.
One of the queries that's missing is the user raised. I know it's elsewhere in the minutes, but it should be tracked.
Okay.
I think the other one that's interesting is a breakdown by JDK, by JDK level.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, sounds good. I can add those to the list. I'll do that straight after this meeting.
All right. Should we put, I guess this is a bit of a side question, should we put every pull request that's been fixed to date into the 0.8 milestone so that you could go back and see what was fixed in 0.8? And then we do the same thing going forward for all the releases?
I think that makes sense.
I'm not sure we need to do it manually.
Is it super hard to do?
Oh yeah, there is the release feature of Git that might show us that information automatically.
Once we create the release for it, we should be able to see all of the pull requests in there magically, is my belief.
See how that works.
Do we have to, I'm showing my lack of knowledge of the Eclipse release process now. So I know we've gone through the release proposal process and we proposed doing a release, and as part of that we had to do an IP log. Do we have to update that IP log when we actually do the release? Jonathan, do you know?
So on the flow diagram, it doesn't really show that. And I think that's because the flow diagram would imply that you would do your IP log very close to the release.
I see.
But I think it's worth just revisiting that to see whether we should really do another IP log, especially if we think a lot's been updated, changed, added to. Yeah, let's look into that to see what we should be doing there.
There's also an additional CQ that was approved.
Ah, okay, then we should absolutely do an IP log. Because it's going to pick up on something new.
Although, I don't think the code that we got the CQ approved for is actually delivered yet.
No, it's still pending. There may have been two. Did the MinGW?
Yeah, that was the other one.
So are those going into the 0.8 release?
The MinGW one has. has been delivered already. The other one is in the process of being delivered. It's under review.
Okay.
Jonathan, I've tagged you with the action item on that.
Okay, yeah, I can go and do that.
The one other thing here is that there's a note to make sure that we're labeling issues with beginner and help wanted. Just a reminder to everybody to make sure that we are actually doing that and to encourage all committers to continue to use those labels. Makes it easier for new people looking at how to approach the project to get involved. Anything further on this first topic, or can we move to the next one? Hearing silence, I will jump to the next item. The next item is release mechanics. I will admit to being remiss due to being out of the office the last week. I've started working on testing the release process today. I'm hoping to have put together a test branch by the end of the day. So should be able to see some testing of that soon. All right, so next topic is machines. Mentioned that the AIX machines are available and being set up. Does anybody have an update on that? Are they in the CI system yet?
I don't have an update on it, but I'll find out maybe even by the end of this call.
All right.
Joe mentioned there were problems with the machines, but I don't have the details.
Okay. And does anyone have an update on pursuing the x86 machines through the University of New Brunswick? I know Charlie has been involved in doing that, mostly for the OMR project, and we were going to piggyback on that. So I'm not sure. He's not on the call, so I'm not surprised. No update.
We should consider inviting him explicitly to the next call to tell us about that, if you would be willing. Okay, so the AIX machines, there's some complication with the disk space that has been allocated. And apparently there's some question on whether or not we've asked for enough CPU resource. But I'll try to talk to that with them. Oh, and they want a more updated version of AIX on there. They want AIX 7.2 rather than 7.1. I'm not exactly sure why. So we can follow up with that through the week.
All right. All right, so the next one on our topic was the end user experience. Mark, that you were going to reach out to users that have already engaged the project?
Yeah, I didn't do that very explicitly, but I did participate on a bit of a tweet storm between me and Charlie Nutter. He was reporting, as you know, some excellent startup improvement, like 30% startup improvement for JRuby using shared classes and AOT, and he was looking for some more information about how to tune it. So as part of providing that, I tried to entice him to come to our hangout and report on that, but I don't know if he was actually available to do that. He did very generously retweet the information about where all our documentation is, like the main sort of page on the website, as well as the information about our joining our Slack channel and about our weekly hangout. So, but it doesn't seem like anyone's actually nibbled at that yet, at least according to the people it looks like have joined the call. So I guess I'll try to be a little bit more explicit about that in the coming week and see if I can get some more people to attend and tell us more about how things are working for them.
Okay. Just on that topic, over the past week, I was at FOSDEM and at JFocus, and there was interest there in Metronome and in non-compressed refs VMs for larger heaps with Metronome. So there, we are starting to get nibbles from other places as well.
It's good. That's interesting. Now they want Metronome. Sigh. Okay. Yeah. So actually, maybe I'll hijack slightly because I don't think it's on the agenda because I probably forgot to add it. Yeah. Oh, actually, it is there. Okay, sorry. I'll stop because it's one of the later items. So I won't interrupt. Sorry.
No worries. So the next item on this was the query for the list of end user items. Thank you, Mark, for going through and tagging each of those. Have any of them been identified as good candidates to discuss at this meeting?
Not that I'm specifically aware of, no.
Okay. I think let's keep that as an action item so that we continue to review that list and bring up anything that should be discussed.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll get the query in there quickly too, just so that it can be found. It's not hard to do.
Was there any other discussion on the end user experience? All right. Moving on to the next release after 0.8. We have some requirements gathering. I see a list of possible items listed here. I think we need to broaden that out and push for a little bit more clarity on areas that people are focusing on. I believe I sent a note out on the mailing list, but I may send that out again and push for some additional details on areas of focus. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up or discuss around the next release after 0.8?
So I think platforms is a discussion that, I know it's there, but platforms is a discussion that we really should be tackling, I think, because it keeps coming up from a number of different angles.
Okay.
Although I have no idea how to prioritize them because it's kind of the same set that keep coming up, right? So there's the Mac OS is obviously very important to a lot of people because that's where they do their development work. Charlie Nutter mentioned that as well, actually. And I know people from other places are, I use a Mac, so it would be nicer for me if it was natively available. I know we have an issue open for doing that. I think some of the work has actually even been done too, but I'm not up to date on what the latest state of that is.
I can jump in there for a minute and give a status on that.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I've got the port library compiling. I've done that by taking the same approach that the ZTPF team have taken and just if-def'd out a bunch of calls that I believe are no longer necessary or at least not necessary to get to Hello World. And then I've been working on updating some of the handwritten assembly code to make it compile on Mac OS, porting it to the M4 macros that we've been using for most of the other assembly code. Right now I'm running into a fairly minor issue with proper labeling of functions. I'm missing an underscore in a bunch of places where I'm making calls. So it's just more work to hammer through.
Yep.
All right.
Cool. Is there other work that we know of that sort of downstream of that to, like, do we think that there's any GC work or any, I'm not aware of any JIT work other than to possibly review some of the macros that we're using in platformy places to make sure that we are going through the right paths on Mac OS. But beyond that, I don't think we need to do anything necessarily for the linkage, because all the work's kind of been done at OMR, at least from a, and we use private linkage mostly on private linkages on OpenJ9, right? So yeah, that's the only work I can think of on the JIT side off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the amount of work is minimal once we get a Hello World going.
Right. Okay. All right. How do you have a gut feeling for how far away that is?
I suspect a week of solid development time would get me there. Given that solid development time is hard to come by, it might take slightly longer than that week.
Yeah. Okay. So, given a quarterly release kind of cadence, are you thinking that there might be a Mac OS platform availability for the next release? Like, do you think that's possible?
For the next quarterly release?
Yeah. Given that we haven't even done this one yet, but anyway.
I think it should definitely be possible to have a basic VM standing up. It'll be, where does shared classes fit? Where does everything else fit into that? To be determined.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Just because the port library is compiling doesn't mean it's working properly on Mac. We're reusing OMR for a lot of it, but there is some port library stuff in OpenJ9.
Right. Okay.
There also may be test work to adjust the tests to make sure they handle differences in platforms.
I can say that we're running tests against the OpenJDK Mac version, so there's most of the tests are running well.
Okay, that's good.
That's good enough. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll keep hammering away on that. I'll try to take a harder look at that JIT to see if there's any places that I can specifically find that might need a some macOS support or changes. So Windows is, I guess, like it's basically working but not performant. Is that the?
Now that problem is fixed now. So we're now using MinGW. We do have the performance that we were looking for, and it fixed some of the crashes we were having due to Stack Overflows.
Oh, sweet.
So it's just a matter of working through the remaining test failures and seeing if there's anything else wrong or if they're just test problems.
All right, cool.
And then the other platform listed here is ARM.
Yeah, ARM.
That is in theory working now.
It's a set of platforms, really. But.
Well, we have a reference platform that should be running with the change that went in this week.
Yeah.
Sounded like James had a bunch of tests running against it as well. He ran the entire OpenJDK regression suite against it, which, against my better judgment, there's 6,000 tests in that suite, and many of them wouldn't apply to an OpenJ9 build, but he still ran them all, pounded through them. 4,000 of them ran, 2,000 won't, but I expect that's about the right number that shouldn't run it. So we'll have to look at the set.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be, I think that's the 32-bit hard float platform.
Correct.
And then I think he's intending to take a look at the soft float, but there may be some additional work for that. And then, of course, none of that has anything to do with ARM64, which would be a great direction for us to get moving in, but that's a fairly large amount of work to get to it. It'd be a really great place for people to help us. We have people willing to help us.
Agreed.
We do have one ARM64 machine at Adopt and are running tests against the OpenJDK 8 build for that. I think we're going to have some additional test work around the ARM testing as we bring it online, because it takes a lot longer to run tests on that platform. So we'll want to parallelize things more than we do normally. So we'll be taking a look at that.
So it sounds like from a next release standpoint, we might have Mac OS kind of standing up for people to try, but we wouldn't be offering it probably as a supported platform yet, unless we get lucky. And
Depends how many tests pass.
Yeah, I know. But at least it might be able to run something, maybe just Hello World, but hopefully maybe more than that. And then maybe some of the ARM stuff and Windows. I guess it sounds like Windows is already kind of in better shape than. So I guess the number of failures that we've got for Windows that we know about, does that look like a containable for the next release kind of workload, or?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we pencil in Windows, we pencil in Mac OS as a, I don't know what you want to call it, tech preview. Come up with some word that means it's not supported, but it's there. And hopefully some ARM32 stuff is also there. Are there any other platforms that anyone's heard interest in? Oh, I guess there's also the question of how do we deal with 64-bit non-compressed refs? That's kind of like right now all we have are compressed refs builds, right? Which means we're limited in heap size to some gargantuan number, but not infinity.
So that really, if we follow the same approach we've used in the past for the IBM SDK, that boils down to a bunch of build work to be able to compile the JVM twice, once in compressed ref mode and once in non-compressed mode, and then a bit of composition to put them together. So, a minimal viable product is a bunch of build work to make this happen.
Right. And then I guess Charlie opened that issue. I think it was Charlie opened the issue to discuss how/whether we could fold all the different paths for compressed versus non-compressed into one JVM, right? One sidecar, like a single sidecar solution, single JVM solution.
Yeah.
All right. I haven't looked at that one in a while. Has there been an update there? Does anyone know?
There hasn't been much progress. There hasn't been any progress there, I believe, just due to the fact that it's a large item.
Yep.
That we'll need to sit down and make a plan for how to bite that off in pieces.
Right. I mean, I guess the disk footprint would be the main argument against having the dual sidecar approach that we've got right now, right? Well, and plus, I guess, the build complexity of introducing that.
And then loss of performance would be the argument against having a single JVM, because then everything would have to be a runtime check.
Right.
By the way, with the difference, is there a query or some output from Java version that tells me I am using one versus the other, compressed ref or not?
If you're using OpenJ9, you're using compressed refs.
Yes, I know right now we are. But I guess I'm asking because we actually have to know that when we run tests. You have to know.
It should be in the version output.
Yeah.
But need to double check.
If it isn't there, we would put it there, I guess.
It was there before. I'm just not sure if we lost it from OpenJ9 for some reason.
Okay.
There's been a lot of version changes recently. So
Yeah. Okay.
So Shelley, is that just so that you know whether or not to use what command line options are available to you in order to?
Yeah,
okay.
and if you see in our test issue list, I want us to auto detect rather than have people have to set the spec and know what the string is for them to set. I'd rather just auto detect it. So, that we can.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's there. Maybe not in a form people would like, but on the third line, it's written out. It says compressed references.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
all right, so we're down to about 5 minutes left before Zoom is going to kick us off. So if there's no further discussion for the next release that has to happen today, let's jump to advertising the call. Given that we're still seeing IBMers on the call, or only IBMers on the call, I think we need to continue to push this.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I tried to advertise it a little bit via Twitter. I did, just as we were kind of in the middle of this call, I tried to tweet the Zoom link. But I didn't do a very good tweet job on that one. I didn't hashtag it or @mention or anything with it, so it may not have gotten to too many people's attention, and I probably should have done it a couple of days ago, just to remind people about it. So anyway, so I think that's one thing we can do. Have we got, or did anyone get access to the @OpenJ9 Twitter account? Yeah.
Excuse me. I believe I have the password, but it's on my other phone, so I'll have to make sure that still boots. And
phone guy. All right.
We still need to create the labels page on the OpenJ9 wiki, so that's something I can take on hopefully for the next week. And then any other business that we want to discuss today in our last 3 minutes?
I threw Linux packages into the any other business. Not something we need to discuss right now, but just so we don't forget about it, something we should consider at some time, how we get those created.
By that you mean like the PPA things that you do for Ubuntu and those things? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So a quick note, I guess we're looking at getting the release drop next week at Adopt and run it through all of the testing. Simon had mentioned we were hoping for a Monday drop, but I guess that's looking at around midweek now.
We're not sure when it's going to happen.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have people ready to get it through all of the different testing we want to get it through.
We'll have to keep you posted when we find out what the date is.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. And in terms of the next call, next Wednesday, same time. Does that work for anybody, or is there any objections to keeping our current schedule?
That works for me.
Yeah, let's keep the same cadence. I think keeping it to a regular slot is probably the best way at the moment.
Okay, so February 21st.
My meeting invite is expired, so if we want to keep having that, I'll have to send out a new one. Or we could start using the Google Calendar.
All right, and we're under a minute, so I'm going to say thank you to everybody, and we'll end the call now before it unceremoniously kicks us out. So.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Thanks, bye.
Bye.